What do you think about this phenomenon? Less people are reading. Like, it feels like almost nobody is reading per capita. What do you make of that? Do you see that as an existential crisis?
No.
What do you make of it?
No. Well, reading for pleasure has always been a minority occupation. Like, most people don't read for pleasure. Of the people who read for pleasure, only a small proportion buy books. Of the people who buy books, only a small proportion buy difficult books. It's a specialty market. And I don't think that's changing. What I do see happening, though, is that is being expanded in surprising ways by such things as YouTube videos and podcasts.
So you can find the value in something like that is just as valuable as something you could possibly find in a book.
Well, I think that the two technologies have their advantages and disadvantages. The thing about a book that you can't get from a discussion is that a book is like a portrait as opposed to a photograph. A photograph, it's click, that's that. A portrait you layer on and layer on and layer on and work over on for weeks. You still have the same single image, but there's this depth to it. And a book enables you to think and then rethink and think and then rethink. And so you can go deeper in a book than you can, I would say, in any other medium. Okay. But that doesn't mean you can't go deep in a podcast. And it doesn't mean that there's no educational utility in podcasts. Plus, there's audiobooks, right? And people are listening to those
that
mad.
was another question. Do you think that audiobooks are just as valuable as books?
Oh, sure.
Just as good?
Well, the thing is, if you can really read, you can read way faster than you can listen. So reading is more effective, except that, and this is what's cool about podcasts and what's game-changing about them, I would say, is we can't read while you're driving.
Yeah.
You can't read while you're doing the dishes or exercising. And so all of a sudden with the podcast world, people have all this time that was used maybe listening to music, which is fine, right? But lots of people now are listening to like difficult podcasts.
Yeah, educational ones.
Yes, and long, detailed discussions about political issues that was never possible with television or even with radio for that matter. So, and people say, well, young people have a fragmented attention span. It's like, well, yeah, but Joe Rogan does 3-hour podcasts, and those do just fine. And your podcast is how long usually?
It's long, 2 hours, generally.
Yeah. Right, so that's not for a fragmented attention.
Sure.
So, no, I think it's good.
You're absolutely right. I think the number one person who listens to this podcast and podcasts in general are people who are occupied doing something else.
Yep.
And I think you're right. That's really valuable to be able to utilize that space.
Definitely. It's found time. And so that's why the podcast market, I think, has exploded. It's like, oh, look, I can make use of commuters. People spend thousands of dollars a month in their time commuting. It's like, poof, all of a sudden you can make that. You can take a university degree while you're commuting, essentially, in terms of the knowledge that you can attain. Sure. So I'm not pessimistic about that at all.
And also the way that you have been using YouTube with your content is kind of amazing.
It's
the way that there's hundreds of thousands of views on your lectures and
and they're difficult. They're difficult lectures. Like they push me when I'm lecturing, and they're long. That's right. And there's a big market for high quality educational material.